I said it before and I'll say it again. There is going to be some kind of reckoning in this country as it pertains to illegal immigrants following the coronavirus pandemic. And the simplest reason is that we are all being told to sacrifice. Our jobs have been destroyed. Many people will never get their jobs back. Our hospitals are overcrowded, so much so that they're sending in naval hospital vessels, big ships to the east and west coasts to help accommodate these hospitals that are being overcrowded due to the massive influx of COVID patients. Yet, at the same time, we are seeing these hospitals, like in New York City, guarantee access to illegal immigrants. First and foremost, I must stress it is a moral imperative for us to save the lives of any human being, including illegal immigrants. It's a rock and a hard place for sure, and these hospitals need to help them. If not just for the fact that they are human beings who deserve to have their lives saved. Of course, we must protect all life. It's also because we want to prevent the spread of disease, and that means everybody must be treated effectively. But it doesn't mean people in this country are going to be happy about it. And there is a potential that if it gets really, really bad, and we got good news. I mean, it looks like, at least in New York, the curve has been bent. The peak has been shifted. The infection rates are going down. And this is what we expected to see a couple of weeks on. If we didn't do the lockdown, it'd be getting worse and worse. So right now we're being told to sacrifice. At the same time, there are people who have come into this country illegally who are getting access to these benefits. So there will be some kind of reckoning, I believe. California, California governor considers aid for immigrants amid virus. California in the past granted access to their healthcare system to illegal immigrants under the age of 25, and there are other benefits involved. In Chicago, Mayor, I believe Lori Lightfoot is her name, has used an executive decree, an executive order, guaranteeing that illegal immigrants will get access to relief packages. And of course, in the media, they're saying like, oh, but what about the undocumented workers? There was a story last week about a couple trucks disguised as construction crews carrying illegal immigrants into this country. And when Customs and Border Protection tried to flag them down, they opened fire on law enforcement. These are the people that they're coming in now. They're not all like Trump mentioned. He was heavily criticized for saying, Mexico is not sending their best. Well, I can't tell you who's being sent and who's coming, and it's not even Mexico. Many of these people are coming from Guatemala and Honduras. But I will tell you this. You do need to consider some of the people who come are really bad people, and they're opening fire on CBP, which we need. And I'll also remind you that Bernie Sanders himself has stated, I think it was just last year, maybe even this year, that an influx of illegal immigrant workers will depress wages for the working class and low-skilled labor. Perhaps one of the reasons why unemployment was going down so much and wages were increasing is because Trump took a very hard stance against illegal immigration. Yet in certain places like California and Illinois and New York, they will keep expanding benefits to non-citizens. The problem is resources are finite. We are not necessarily overpopulated in this world. There's many people who would argue we are. Perhaps we are. We've got plastic islands, the gyres in the oceans. We've got plastic bits washing up on shores, a lot of trash. And I'm not saying it's from the US, but we do have pollution problems. So there are things to consider in ocean acidification and carbon emissions and all these things that humans contribute to. However, humans could disperse and live in more rural areas, but many don't want to. What we're doing is we're concentrating in these big cities, and people just want to live there. So New York's population density is like 28,000 people per square mile. That's absolutely ridiculous. So whether or not on Earth we are overpopulated, some would argue we are, some would argue we aren't, or we're close to. In cities, seems like we definitely are. And one of the results of that is disease. Look up any scientific research on the effects of overpopulation on animal populations, and they'll say that as more and more deer or whatever animal start inhabiting closer quarters, the likelihood of disease spread starts increasing, which is why it's no surprise to see New York being so hard hit. I'm not trying to equate humans to animals, but humans are a life form on this planet in very similar ways. The reason I'm not is because we have medical technology. I get it. Deers can't go to the hospital and they don't have quarantine measures. But humans are not completely removed from the ecosystem. We're very much a part of it. So yes, when we start jamming people into these cities, don't be surprised when diseases emerge. But then when you start saying anyone can come, and you start, the cities are already filled to the brim with people, you're now offering up aid to people, You're incentivizing this behavior. And yes, I will remind you that some of these people come in trucks and open fire on our law enforcement. They're not all bad. Okay, but the issue is that we can't allow criminals to come in, that's for sure. I'm not saying most of them are criminals or anything like that. You know, I understand people screech, but I think you have this very naive, pie in the sky, rainbow world view of immigration. And that's why you'll look at some of these news outlets and politicians where they conflate immigrant and illegal immigrant. There's a big difference between a dude who comes in a construction truck opening fire or runs across the border and wanders through the desert and gets their kids killed, and somebody who fills out the paperwork, waits in line, smiles with and gives a handshake to CBP or, you know, whoever's at the border. And then when you know, they're able to come in, they can come in. Immigrants wait in line because we are a nation of immigrants. We do allow immigration much more than any other country, but some people want to jump the line. And those people come here relatively recently and then say, can we get access to these benefits? So what do you think is going to happen when you have somebody who lives in Guatemala or Honduras with a low, GDP? They don't make a lot of money. And you're seeing now California says we're going to give aid to non-citizens. They could just come right now and be like, oh yeah, I'm here, give me money. And they likely will. Or they can come here and get access to our hospitals. Now, again, I think we should actually save as many lives as possible. But you also need to realize that resources are finite. I say it all the time, but it's true. So when you do this and you incentivize this behavior, it's on you. Let's read. Otherwise, I'll just keep ranting. But I got a bunch of stories for you. And before we go on, I will also say, dreamers, in my opinion, DACA recipients, I think should absolutely be receiving benefits. There's a big difference between someone who came here, in the past 6 months, and somebody who came here as a kid, doesn't remember anything. But there's nuance to the argument. Let's read the story from the Daily Herald. Governor Gavin Newsom said Tuesday he is working with the legislature on an economic stimulus package for immigrants in the country illegally and others not covered by the federal stimulus package approved by Congress. The federal government is dividing up about $30 billion to roughly 14 million Californian households this month, part of the Federal CARES Act. But the checks, $1,200 per adult earning less than $75,000 and $2,400 per couple, only go to those who file their taxes using a Social Security number, which makes sense. Because this is going to drive up, it's going to devalue the dollar. The easiest way to explain it is we're borrowing from ourselves in the future. If you have a savings, this is bad news for you. We're just dumping and printing money. It's not going to make anything. It's just going to give people access to buying things, but it will cause serious problems. We're doing it because it's an emergency. For the people, we want to keep our economy going. But for the people who are just coming here in recent history and then getting our benefits, they are adding drag to our system, and it's already under, duress. Those who use an individual taxpayer identification number, or ITIN, including most living in the country illegally, are excluded. The $2.2 trillion federal aid package also includes money to boost unemployment benefits by an extra $600 per week. Money also available to people living in the country illegally who have lost their jobs because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Money is also unavailable. About 2 million people in California are suspected of living in the country illegally, according to the California Latino Legislative Caucus. The group has asked Newsom to create a disaster relief fund for cash payments to those immigrants until the state's emergency proclamation is lifted or they're able to return to work. Newsom said, all of that is being considered, adding it as part of a broader package he plans to unveil in May that will include some economic stimulus strategies at a state level, not just waiting for the federal government to do that for us. I'm going to stop right now. Let's talk climate change. Let's talk the environment. One of the biggest problems that, let me give you an argument. Many people on the right will say something like, would you let someone come into your house? Would you leave your door unlocked? And the response from the left is typically a country is not a house. The argument makes no sense. The argument does make sense. They're making a point about finite space and resources, which many people on the left don't seem to understand or don't care about. But let's play with the argument. Let's say you have a house and you invite everybody to come in. Eventually, there's no food left. There's the electrical bill is ridiculously high. Not everyone's going to pay it. Some people are going to come in, use stuff, and leave. Your floor is going to get destroyed. Your carpeting will be destroyed. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, and someone's got to pay for that. I mean, to put it simply, anybody who's ever had a carpet in their house knows what happens when you have a ton of people come over and they don't take off their shoes. The carpet gets tattered, and you got to pay for it. They're not going to pay for it. But let's say, you know what, you're right. A country is not a house. Many of these people have said there's tons of rural open space in this country and we could use the economic expansion. So this is where things get really strange to me as someone who very much so cares about the environment. If your argument is that we should expand by bringing in immigrants, illegal or otherwise, and have them spread out into the countryside, they're going to start cutting down trees, building roads, and damaging the environment. I'm not entirely sure we want more population density in our cities, or we want to actually destroy more forests and more wildlands, but sure, if that's your argument. Let's also consider that people who live in Honduras or Guatemala have a much smaller carbon footprint. If you open the door to all of these people to just come in, and then you say we're going to pass a bill which is going to give you cash, they're now more likely to start buying things and increasing their carbon footprint, which is devastating to the environment. So if you're someone who cares about climate change, the last thing we need in this country is more fat and wealthy Americans dumping money on things they don't need that make climate change worse, right? Many people have brought this argument up. I don't understand how many of these pro-illegal immigration activists reconcile this. They must not care about the environment. There are many people who claim to care about both, but it seems quite contradictory. Maybe you want to see everybody stop, driving cars or something, but then you're bringing people in, telling them they can drive cars, and then giving them money to do it. Something similar is happening in Chicago, although this is weird, stranger, because Mayor Lightfoot just signed an executive order. Chicago mayor signs executive order to ensure illegal immigrants can access coronavirus relief funds. I wouldn't want to live there. I lived in Chicago. Chicago's super corrupt. I wouldn't want to live there. I've heard good things about Lori Lightfoot from some of more conservative-leaning people who live in Chicago. But I couldn't imagine my tax money going to people who have only recently arrived and have done so, surreptitiously or illicitly. I'm not, look, I respect life, all life, human life. I don't care if you're illegal immigrant, legal immigrant, American citizen. I think our medical system should be there to save you. But asking our government, our tax dollars, to be given out to help people in these trying times, I think it almost feels like, look, I know there are some illegal immigrants who have been here for a long time. So personally, I do think DACA recipients, for instance, should be receiving aid. There's a very complicated problem with DACA stuff. We can talk about it. I've got an article I'll pull up. But there are a lot of people who just showed up, and it's like, imagine you had all your roommates get together and said, okay, we got the rainy day fund. We're going to divide everything up. And then all of a sudden some dude walks in the front door and he goes, I want some of that money. You're like, whoa, dude, we've all pitched in over the past year for our rainy day fund. We got like $100 in here, and there's like 5 of us. We're each going to get $20. You come in, now everyone's going to get less money. That's literally how it will work. For a lot of these people who don't pay attention and don't care, they don't realize what's happening. So they're just like, I don't know, whatever. Hey, $1,200, that's cool. Imagine how much it could have been if we didn't have a large illegal immigrant population. Many people on the left would like to point out that illegal immigrants do pay taxes. That's fine if you want to argue that people who have been here for some time and who are working are paying taxes using an ITIN number. I understand they do. But what are the people who got here a few months ago who aren't working? Because they have. This is a problem. We can't track these people. And it's also a problem because we do not want to increase population density, especially during a pandemic. It has nothing to do with the individuals. It has to do with being with responsible household management. So what I've said repeatedly is I think there's going to be a wake up for a lot of people when they see there's going to be negative consequences to stimulus. You can't just give out money. There will be consequences. And if it does get bad, you're going to see a lot of people wondering why there was no room at the hospital. And you're going to have a lot of questions from people saying, why are non-citizens getting hospital beds and citizens not? Citizens pay taxes, they vote, they've been here, you live here, or you're a legal immigrant, a resident, or a legal citizen. And you have people who just jump the line and sort of like break in. Imagine it's someone, breaking into your house and then taking your food. Sure, you can be like, they need food, we must always protect the food, but to a certain degree, you can give someone food, but you have to recognize you can't keep doing this. Well, Chicago is going to do it, same as many other jurisdictions. The Washington Post writes, undocumented workers among those hit first and worst by coronavirus shutdown. Yes, that's true. But what's going on to where all of a sudden we're just like, we don't care that people are breaking the laws to enter this country? Some people, are we all open borders activists? Let me ask a question. Because I know there's going to be a bunch of lefty naysayers and they're going to be like, see, Tim is far right. Wait, when have we ever been an open borders nation? We haven't. Bernie Sanders isn't. This is one of the things they've tried to smear me with or something, that Tim's views align with conservatives on immigration. That's a lie. That was some journalist lying, because my views align, or they used to, with Bernie Sanders. So, okay, fine, I guess you want to say that. But how insane has it gotten that Bernie Sanders, who's been a socialist most of his life, or his entire life as far as I can tell, said only in the past few months or last year or whatever that illegal immigration depresses wages? Someone who has said in the last year, while he's campaigning for president in this cycle, he said, we cannot open the borders. My God, there are too many poor people. They can't all come. Bernie Sanders. Now, of course, Bernie Sanders flip-flopped to pander to the woke left, I guess. So we'll see how he does. But it's insane. Laborers in this country know you can't do that. Working class people, union Democrats know you can't do this. But it brings me to the final bit I want to get to. While I can absolutely criticize California for just giving this money away, I guess fine. So long as California doesn't have the power to print money, they can spend their money as they see fit. And if you're someone who lives in California and you're okay with it, well, then there you go. If you like living in San Francisco and seeing the poop all over the streets, congratulations. And I don't know why somebody would want to live in California at this point. I lived there briefly. You know, when I was younger, I was like, man, California, that's the place to be, right? And then I moved there in my early 20s. And then I left. And I was like, wow, that was a lie. California is awful. It's not nice. Yeah, there are some places, parts of it that are nice. There are beautiful parts of it. But there are a lot of places, I mean, the way the government is run, nah, I'm surprised people want to live there. But we do have a more complicated problem, and that's DACA recipients. Vox.com says this nurse is treating the sickest coronavirus patients. Trump still wants to deport him. He's one of thousands of DACA recipients who could imminently lose their status. When I talk about resources being strained, I'm talking about, for the most part, how do we put a stop on people rushing in at the last minute, taking our resources? People who have been here for a very, very long time. I think, honestly, I would love nothing more than a path to citizenship for all illegal immigrants. And many Democrats have said so. Here's the problem. Well, if we do that, we incentivize the behavior. And there have been many people who said, okay, how about we do amnesty, and then from now on we go more strict? It wouldn't work. If right now the U.S. government said we're going to give everyone amnesty, you would dramatically incentivize the behavior, and you would have people literally rush here full speed to try and say they've been here for a lot longer than they really did, because everybody wants to come to America. America is awesome. And that's why everybody wants to come here. So as much as it, in our emotional part of our brain, we're like, I'd love to give people access to the American dream. It's just not possible for many, many reasons. And it's also, you got to consider how the stimulus package would have to be upped, how much money would have to be spent if we were like, okay, anybody just gets money. It wouldn't work. It's not sustainable. Everyone's got to pitch in. Then we can give people benefits. Which brings me to the DACA recipients. These are people who have been in this country since they were kids. And I think the oldest age is something like maybe 14 or 16 years old. That to me is kind of pushing it. But I understand if you're a minor and your parents brought you here, I think your parents would be held accountable because they put you in this position. But what are we supposed to do, man? Yeah, I mean, you got to think about this logically. There are people who have been in this country since they were little kids and they don't know any other country. And many of them have been deported. So what are we supposed to do? You take someone who's like 20, they've never lived anywhere else. They like American football. They grew up in this country. You send them back to Guatemala or Mexico or Honduras, and they're like, I don't know anything about this country. I don't remember living here. That's a serious problem. But more importantly, people who grew up here and were brought here by their parents, for me, this is the begrudging acceptance of like, it's not begrudging. I want to help everybody. I want to help every single undocumented immigrant. The begrudging, but we have to talk about adequate household management. And so for the people who are DACA recipients, who are working here, who are in school, who are nurses, for instance, I think we have to accept that our leadership failed this country a long time ago in many ways. And there were a lot of politicians, both left and right, that were seeking to exploit illegal immigrant labor to their benefit and let it happen. Now we're dealing with young people who didn't choose to be here, and it would be inhumane and, in my opinion, frankly absurd to just send them to a country they don't know anything about. I understand there's going to be a lot of people who say things like, that's too bad. Because when I talked about, when I talk about how we absolutely, it's a moral imperative to save the lives of illegal immigrants with our hospital systems, even though it overwhelms us, there were a lot of people who said to me, harsh as it may seem, I don't care. They'd have to be turned away. I disagree for the time being. But trust me when I say DACA will also contribute to a serious reckoning. People are going to wonder why. I mean, in urban centers, people don't seem to pay attention to much of anything. So this is why these bills get passed in the first place. But if people could accurately see how our tax money was being spent, how it was causing inflation, then you will see a reckoning. Like a reckoning in the sense that like people are going to wake up and change and start talking about what they want to change. For me, the line is the DACA recipients, young people. We got to do our best to help them because there's just we have problems. Sometimes there's no good answer to how you deal with these things. I'm sure there are many people who would want to say just deport literally every DACA recipient, but in my opinion, that's just immoral. It's a step way too far. Their parents could be held accountable. But moving forward, you're going to see a lot of people say DACA is the line. After this, we must get a handle on illegal immigration. That's why Trump, one of the reasons why he won, because he was yelling, build the wall. Now, people in big cities don't care and don't pay attention to it. They don't even know who their neighbors are. Think about this. It's such a dramatic divide in these big cities where you have massive, just ridiculous population density and no one knows who the other person is. I lived in New York. I didn't know anybody who lived above me, below me, didn't know who they were. You go out into the country and even out to the suburbs and people start to learn who their neighbors are. Perhaps when there's too many people surrounding you, you don't know or care. So you end up with places like New York. They don't know or care. They're just like, I don't know. I just want me. And so they don't consider how their community is being impacted by a massive influx of people. But I'll tell you what, people in New York complain all day and night about the tiny apartments, the increasing cost of rent. That's because of overpopulation. People need houses, right? So what they do is used to have an apartment. They cut the apartment in half, make it 2 apartments. Now you've got these economy bachelor apartments where it's just 1 room and you have a shared shower and kitchen. That's going to keep happening in New York as long as people keep coming and keep moving in and people need to be housed. Certainly at some point, people will recognize that we have limits on how many people could actually fit in a space. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll wrap this up because I don't want to make this rant too long. For me, my line is DACA. We got to help the dreamers, and you don't have to agree. I understand it's difficult, but my position is basically this: if there are people who came here in the past year or so, yeah, they can go home. I'm sorry, they shouldn't have come here illegally. But if there are people who came here and they're little kids, they have nowhere to go. What do? Are we going to just kick them out into the ocean and exile? I just don't think it makes sense. There is a begrudging acceptance that this could incentivize people to try and rush their kids into the country and know that they will get deported, but they don't care. Their kids will get a better life. Serious problems with how immigration runs in this country. It's not sustainable. People will start to wake up to this when your city, when your state starts giving your taxpayer dollars to people who just got here, and you're going to start wondering why. Maybe some people won't care. Maybe it's just me, but I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you then.